Hi, thanks for joining us today. As a follow-up to the last user group meeting, Patrick Gould, our chief architect, is going to review what's new with Natural. He's going to cover what the new programming features and administrative functions are with Natural 9.1 and 9.2 and show you some tips on how to improve productivity and security. Take it away, Patrick.
I think I've probably bumped into some of you guys over the years. Used to do a lot more travel than we do today. I used to be platinum, executive platinum, all of those wonderful things. And now today I can't stand the sight of an airplane. But anyway, I have been with Software AG for 29 years this year. I love working for Software AG. They brought my family out here in 1993, and we've been here ever since. Another thing is a lot of support people on the call today. So if you do pose any questions, I'm hoping that they'll pop in and answer them for me. We have an absolutely great Adabas Natural support team. So these days I was also hearing that, AI is everything. It's AI, AI, AI. And I was thinking back to Natural many, many years ago. I remember there was a product called Natural Expert. It never got all the way to prime time, but to me, that was probably AI in its first phase many, many years ago. So let's get back onto what I'm going to do today. So today I'm going to do what is new with Natural. And when I say that, I mean what is new with NaturalONE, Natural Development Server. Some of the stuff is pertinent to all platforms. As you know, we run Natural on the mainframe, and we also run it on Linux. And of course, Windows is always there around. So today I'm going to be covering some new program features and administration for both 9.1 and 9.2 on the mainframe, where it is pertinent. And if I do remember, I'll mention anything about Natural other than that platform. And of course, I'm starting off with NaturalONE. So of course, that is the number one off the mainframe GUI editor now. So I will be covering that and remind you that Natural 8.2.8 is about to be reaching end of maintenance. So let's start the presentation and go to the next slide. So let's go. So the first thing I'm going to cover is NaturalONE, because of course the main reason a lot of you are on this call today is we're finally having to move to the Natural 9. It was first released in 2018, and at the end of this year, the last supported version of 8.2 will reach end of maintenance. So what is NaturalONE? I've been working with NaturalONE for many, many years now. It first started as Natural for Eclipse with a partner product, and then eventually it became NaturalONE. So NaturalONE is an Eclipse-based integrated development environment. I'm sure you all know that that is an IDE, and we all work with IDEs. So learning a new plugin inside of an existing IDE should not be that difficult. And it does take a bit of time, but once you're used to it, I believe you are way more productive than you are using the green screen. I know green screen is a lot of muscle memory, but when you see all the features that are available in NaturalONE, I think you'll adopt it quickly and learn to love it. With NaturalONE, we also give you a free version of Natural for Ajax that allows you to create rich internet applications that look like any website you would see today. So you're free to use that to build your own. Backend, of course, is all natural. It has a screen layout painter, and you can go create yourself many applications. If at any stage you think that the application you developed is ready for prime time and needs to be shared with everybody else, at that stage you may purchase a production license for that and open that up to anybody who needs to use that. We have some very, very big clients that use Natural for Ajax, and in the right circumstance, it is a very, very powerful tool. Once you're inside of NaturalONE, you still have access to all your mainframe tools. Most of them are through GUIs, etc. And there are lots of course, other Eclipse plugins that you can now utilize within that same environment. And of course, web methods IntireX, app links, those all fit into the Software AG Designer. So you'll be sitting right next to all of those other products without having to lose that, get out of the IDE. So what does NaturalONE give you? Some of the things, highlights that I like to speak about are object-based templates for new natural objects. So that's similar to copy code or the .g statement in Natural Construct. This allows you to create common used code and put it in a template, and then the ability to pull that into your program or your whatever object you're working at will. We have code templates based on content assist. So generally when you within an IDE and you use the period button, it'll pop up whatever it believes is what you're trying to do next. So that will be available as a code template as well to you with that. Oopsie, sorry, my thing went up. So toggling lines is you can just highlight a whole lot of lines and toggle them into comment lines. Makes it very simple to work with code. We have context-sensitive help. You put your cursor over a statement and you press the F1 key and you will actually get the help manual open up at that particular statement and help you along the way. We have an object dependency view. This is very helpful when you want to know who called me and who am I calling. And if I want to pull that particular code into my UI, I can do that very, very easily just by double clicking on it. Outline view is a high level of your code that you're busy in with a map, etc. It allows you to go directly to that statement just by going through a quick little view on the side, and you'll be able to get and understand your program a lot faster than you would under normal circumstances. We support all natural syntax. The slide's a little old now because we have mainframe, Linux, and Windows. Unix is still supported, I think, until the end of next year. But moving forward, you'll always see it's natural Linux for cloud if you're looking at any documentation, etc. Of course, the fact that the whole code is sitting in the library, we have reliable instant parsing. It's going to show you all error messages that are there at one time, not just the first one. And often as you fix one, of course, some of them will disappear, but it does help you get to those errors a lot quicker. If you hover over an error message, it'll give you more detail about the error message. Easy to fold source code. So if you have a very, very long statement with a for or in a loop at the end, you'll be able to fold that just to make it easier for you to get around and not look at so much code at the same time. We have automatic upper and lowercase translation. And then we also have context-focused code completion. So if you're not sure what to type next, doing the period, I think it's control period or whatever, it'll pop you up and tell you what everything else you could do if you're trying to get a field of an EDM, or if you're trying to know what the next statement could possibly be, it will do that for you. So there's a lot of features. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm sure a lot of you have learnt a lot of them, but really the manual inside of NaturalONE is great. It'll take you, you'll be able to learn stuff very, very quickly just by using that manual when needed. So this is the roadmap. We'll be sad to see the end of 8.2, but that's just life. We move on, we progress, and we're now in a very good place with Natural 9.2 and the Natural Development Server and NaturalONE all being under one product code called NAT. You use that same key for the installation of NaturalONE and for the mainframe. So there's no separate keys that you need to take care of all the time. So the big thing here is if you look at the top, we have Natural 9.2.1 that was released in October of last year, and it will stay supported until October of 2025. The big thing on this roadmap here is you'll see that 8.2.8, which is the last release of Natural, that will go out of support at the end of this year. We've got a couple of options here for you that you may need if you want to keep using the green screen, but my hope is that most of you move to NaturalONE, as I believe that is the future, as I've said before. So what does that actually mean to you, that a product has gone end of maintenance? When you call into Denver support and you try and open up a support request on an older product, you are going to still be able to get any fixes that have already been created. You will run into a problem if it is a brand new thing and you are the first person to ever get this error and it is causing you a production issue that you cannot live without. At that stage, you will be asked to update to the latest version. So again, we covered that in the thing. The NaturalONE is now the default editor. It is a single UI for all development that I've emphasized, with your other perspectives that can be in the same UI that you're in when you're within NaturalONE. Some people disagree with me. This is easy to learn and intuitive. I'd say that is more relevant if you already understand Eclipse. I think most of the issues we've seen over the years is people just becoming familiar with Eclipse. If you're familiar with Eclipse, learning NaturalONE is a breeze. And got some guys out at Texas Comptroller that will agree with me on that. They managed to learn the program, the language very, very quickly, and the UI, and have presented it for us even. In the end, I believe you're going to get a faster development time. Maybe in the beginning, it will take time to get to that stage, but I do believe you're going to get to faster development time in the end. And of course, you'll be able to attract a wider range of people that are already familiar with a GUI user interface. And of course, it's DevOps integrated. If you want to go with a DevOps environment, it's there for you. You have all the tools within NaturalONE to export it into a code versioning repository and then make that the master copy of your code. Of course, as we've told you, we now have free training. So there are some links here to all the different ways that you can get to free training. There's a lot of videos out there already of people that have put, myself and a lot of other people have put a lot of NaturalONE stuff out there. But of course, the free training is one of the greatest things we got. You can do free training of NaturalONE and many other subjects that you may be trying to get educated on. There is a NaturalONE frequently asked questions, and then there's also a whole area on the web set aside for natural DevOps, if that is something that you want to look into. Again, if you insist on current coverage, so if you really, this is it, my application is in maintenance mode, I make very, very few changes. I do not want to spend any money training new people or existing people in NaturalONE. You do have the option, if you're on the mainframe, to purchase a product called Natural ISPF. When you install Natural ISPF, it will reopen up the green screen editor. There's no changes. You don't have to go and use the Natural ISPF editor, etc. You'll still use your normal editor within CICS or TSO or Batch. It's just the mechanism we use for opening up that key again. And of course, with any product, there will, in certain cases, we will support EME, extended maintenance. That's normally, that we've seen, is that'll be about a 1-year contract, but it is never guaranteed. So if that is something you really need, you should be asking your account executive, and they'll put you in the process for that. But the Natural ISPF, of course, is the easiest, quickest way to go if you want to keep the green screen editor for life. And if you need more information, just contact us. You can contact Becky or myself or anybody else, and we can point you in the right direction if you're not too sure what to do, if this is something that you would like to investigate. So I believe that is everything about NaturalONE that I was going to go through today. That was just a repeat that we've done twice, because believe it or not, I had a call this week with a customer who's busy installing Natural 9.2 and didn't realize the green screen editor was going away. So that was a bit of a shock for them. I don't know why they didn't know. We have put information out there since 2018, but anyway, it does still happen. So we address those case by case as they come in. So now I'm going to cover Natural on the mainframe. As you know, Natural is portable. So a lot of the stuff we talk about when we talk about Natural is portable, so it can be the same for the other platforms, syntax, etc. Of course, there are some things that are just Linux and some things that are just mainframe. But today, what I would really like to emphasize is Natural release notes. I'm going to be covering mostly stuff from 9.2 that is new with 9.2. But to remember that, the documentation is as close as documentation.softwareag.com. You can get to that from anywhere. Even if you're restricted at work, you should be able to do it from your own laptop if you had it at work. But you should be able to get to the documentation. And of course, it's printable as well if you want to print PDFs. But in any documentation with Software AG, you will always see the release notes. And the release notes are there to always tell you what are the supported environments for this particular release. What are the product versions that you have that will be required to be within this release? We then cover new and changed features of Base Natural, and these are generally when people have asked for like a brainstorm request, something they believe should be in the product. And of course, every time we release the product, we will put in the ones at the top of the list based on, I don't know who decides on that, but I'm sure every piece of software works the same way. Then we'll have what's changed in the add-on products like NaturalONE, Natural RPC, Natural Security, etc. There's a ton of those. You'll see when we talk about Natural 2, Natural 9.2, you'll see how many sub-products there actually are. We'll then show you the enhancements on the add-in features. We will always cover dropped features. And then, of course, you can always get to the previous release notes. So if you press that hyperlink, you'll be able to get down to Natural 9.1, Natural 8.2.8, 8.2.7. If you really need older documentation, contact us. We do have ability to get to older documentation if it's something you really require. Excuse me, just needed a drink of water. So moving forward. So of course, I cannot talk about all the features of NaturalONE. You saw that whole long page. But I'd like to talk to some of them that I think that are probably pertinent to you guys. A lot of these come, as I said, from brainstorm requests, but one of the ones that has been asked for was to return the name of the step lib, star library ID, syntax system variable. So there is a new API for that, but you will now get the star library ID. So that must have been something that somebody required in some form of, I would presume, auditing, for example. But then always go back to the manual and read if you want a lot more detail. We now have role server support for vSAM. There are new authorized service manager features, and the 9.1 version, the authorized service features are mainly around the ability to do multi-factor authentication. So we have some customers that do not log in with their user ID and password. Their passwords change on the fly. So we had to introduce that via the authorized services manager to be able to cache the required fields for subsequent links back into the mainframe from the NDV server. And of course, the one that you're going to probably all be crying about is the fact that in Natural 9.1 there were changes to the create and edit. Those two statements went away. And that means that you cannot use the editor to create programs. You can still go run programs. Of course, nothing else changes. If it's not going to be actually changed, there's nothing to stop you going in there and running the program or running the utility like sysaos or sysdic. So the main reason I didn't cover Natural 9.1 too much, because I believe A lot of the customers now are going straight from the 8.2 up to 9.2. That's what we're seeing. So I'm going to focus more on what's new in 9.2, but please, if you need to know exactly about 9.1, there's something that you think what I've spoken about now is needed, please go back and read that in the manual. Some of the features, again, that also did change is we had a new release of Natural Optimizer Compiler. This tool, if you're using it, remember it has great improvements at every release. You will see that with NOC 8.4, there's significant improvements with a whole lot of statements, but you can only make use of these if you compile the code. If you don't compile the code, they're not going to make use of the new features. So if you're looking to optimize a little bit, reduce a bit of CPU, etc., please look at the Natural Optimizer Compiler latest version and install that as needed and recatalog as needed. I never say recatalog everything because some people, that's a scary thought because they want to test. But there are ways with SMF data, etc., to highlight which are the most used programs versus CPU in say a monthly run. We can go right down to the job level and we can see which job is using the most CPU. You can go then cross-reference that and figure out what programs were involved. And then my suggestion is always go recompile the most used programs because those are the ones that are going to give you the most money for the buck. And of course, with the IBM architecture levels, with each new release of Natural Optimizer Compiler, we get ready for that next architecture level. So we're up to 12 now. Some of the other features, because we're now NaturalONE, right? You want to be able to do some of those things because if you don't have a next prompt and a command line in NaturalONE, you're going to want to be able to still look at SIS utility features. So we have provided a GUI for that. You'll see that in NaturalONE. If you go into File, NaturalONE, you should be able to see the ability to open up the natural tools and utilities. So you'll see a screen like this. It's available on all platforms, mainframe, Linux, Windows, but again, it's only pertinent and all the stuff that is in there would be relevant to which platform you're on. So when you're in the mainframe, you'll see all of these features that you can run from here. And of course, the output would then be displayed in the web IO. That's the browser version of the green screen, which is an HTML, dynamic HTML terminal emulator in essence. That's all it is. So it will re-render that green screen as a browser. But yeah, you can see all the different options that you can do. As an example, I put the text statement in there and it would pop that up for me. Something else that is new with because of NaturalONE, the ability to now start creating GUIs for certain features. If you like the Natural Profiler, there is a GUI version of the Natural Profiler, which makes it very, very easy if you want to do a profile test on a program to see how much CPU is being consumed, and it'll tell you exactly what the line number is that is using that CPU. So if you're in an optimization mode and you're trying to save some CPUs, this might be a tool that you'll want to use moving forward. Go on to the Natural for ZOS version 9.2.1. Again, as I've said, because Natural being portable, a lot of this will be pertinent for our Linux customers as well. So one of the big things with Natural moving forward is we're consolidating all the previous versions. I'm sure you've noticed that with Natural 9.1 or 8.2, the versions of NDB, RPC, Natural Optimizer Compiler, they were all different. We've gone back on this now, and we're starting to move everything to a single version number of the product. So we had Natural Mainframe 8.2, we had NDB 8.3, and we had a later release of NDB 8.4, and then zip support. And what we've done, we also then released Natural 9.1, which dropped the green screen edit, of course, and we've consolidated that all now into Natural 9.2. So it is a complete package with about 20 plus products, and the next slide will show you all of that. So for all of you. I know a lot of you have all of these installed. Some of you only have a few of them, but we've done health checks, as you know, and we've managed to see that a lot of your customers have a lot of these slides. I mean, a lot of these products out there. So everything now is at a 9.2.1 version, except I see there for Natural for DB2 Zip. It's a brand new product. So that one is still at that 1.1.1 level. Operating system environments, we now support both 2.4 and 2.5, and certain platforms have now been retired, so we will not see new versions for BS 2000 and ZVSE. At a CICS transaction manager, you can see we support 5.4, 5.5, 5.6, 6.1. Under complete, 6.8.1, 6.8.2. IMS, we're at transaction manager 15.2. Adabas, you should be at 8.5. For DB2, you should be at 12.1 and 13.1. We never say it won't work if it's an earlier version. We just probably have not tested it ourselves. But put some slides here on fast release here, so I'm just going back. Apologize for that. So moving forward, the installation for 9.2.1 is almost the same as 8.2 and 9.1, so that should please our administrators. Some of the differences that you do not have to set up RPC server with impersonation, does not require APF authorization anymore. That is now built into the authorized service manager. So hopefully most of you are running the authorized service manager. That's NatAsm 9.2, and that will be something that you'd set up within there to do your impersonation via RPC. Small changes in natural review. If you're a big natural review user, we'll see that there's a change for the ability to trap the load library ID support. So if you want to have that system variable recorded in your review reports, you'd have to do that. And of course, there is a quick file change, as you can see over there. With any release, we always have dropped functionality. So you'll see that these are all the pieces that have been dropped. When we talk about LUW comp, there's a new statement for that. It's called 8.2 comp, I think. So I'll be covering that a little later. And then, of course, at a high level, we have discontinued Natural for DL1 support. So if you didn't know that and you still have DL1, let us know. But I don't think we scoured everybody who had it and no one was actually using it, or there was an alternate for that. And again, refer to the 9.2.1 release notes for further details. So new functionality under 9.2, I'm going to be going over these in a little bit more detail, but at a high level, we're doing support for versions, new DB2 functionality for both version 12 and 13. More support for extended datasets. Well, we now support VSAM extended datasets to go in line with what IBM has done. There's some new natural RPC server improvements as far as tracing goes. There's a couple of syntax enhancements with the compress, the timestamp X, which is now more accurate as we move through these faster and faster machines. There are some natural NDV server improvements. I'll be showing you those. Buffer pool is now with 64-bit cache, and then delete equals on if you're using LE environments is something you can use now from that common language environment. Okay, so some of the syntax improvements. If we want to look at a move by name position, this was available, but the error messages that you would get did not help you be able to clarify what the actual error was. So it used to be a NAT 631 and a 300, but now, because if you're doing this with a large number of fields, it's hard to identify that. So there is now a new natural error, a natural 0321, who's going to better explain which field within the move by name position is incorrect and help you resolve that. So that must have been a change enhancement that was brought in because of probably causing some developers more time than they wanted to spend. Read write work file. I can't believe it's taken this long for this to arrive. I thought this would have come many, many years ago. The ability to have a variable for your read work file. So this will now allow you to put that into common routines, where the only thing that maybe changed was the actual work file number. So in the old way, you had a fixed write work file, and you'll see in the new Natural 9.2, you can set a variable and then be able to use it with a write work, read work with a variable in front of the name. Compress. This looks like another statement where it was obviously a headache, and it required you to code a lot more statements. You can see the difference between version 9.2 and version 8.2 here. When you want to do a compress and you want to have edit masks enabled on the different fields you're compressing, you can now do that in a single compress statement. So I think that is a nice feature that will help people that are used to using the powerful compress statement within Natural. Another new one, which is the new system variable timestamp X. I've noticed some customers will actually use the timestamp from the STK clock, the STCK store clock by IBM, for keeping uniqueness in Adabas records. So they get the store clock and they save that in the actual Adabas file. So this has now been extended to be more accurate. And it also fixes the fact that in 2042, it will have run out of overflow time wrap. So if that's something that you still think you'll be coding in 2042, probably something you want to start, if you're using the timestamp variable, to maybe start using the timestamp X variable. So yeah, we go back to that LUW comp statement I was talking about. Of course, when you introduce any new version, so there's a new compiler option, V82 comp, to make sure that you keep your code compatible if your development environments and your production environments are different at version numbers, and you don't want to move something that's pure 9.2 back into an 8.2 environment, you can use this V82 comp. The 64-bit memory cache for buffer pool has been introduced. This will allow cache storage at 64-bit, commonly above the bar. Shows you what the maximum allocated size is, and you'll see how you would use that within different utilities. So basically, it's going to be has significance when you do a create or add cache function. So you'll see here that if you want to create a buffer pool, there's an old and there's a new way, or if you want to use a data space or a memory object when you're using 64-bit, that's the way to do it. And you'll see when the actual buffer pool comes up, you'll be able to see what type of buffer pool has been started. And then also this required changes to sys BPM. So if you're looking at your buffer pool to see if it's acting as you believe it should be acting, there will now be a new cache attached line item in that you'll be able to see. Moving forward to RPC enhancements, there is now a dynamic RPC trace that you can set, so you don't have to stop and start the RPC server to change the trace levels. For security, of course, you saw that with the secure buffer that I've talked about earlier, is support and long password support, and then impersonation for Natural is now in the authorized service manager. Let's have some water again. So the situation before Natural 9.2.1 was you had to use RPC auth, and you would be able to have that APF authorized. That is not the case anymore. So the goals was to be able to, sorry, that one jumped right out at me. So situation before, and then the situation after. So the goals was to basically, with long passwords, is support long passwords, as the OS now offers 100 characters for a password. This will also use the newest RPC protocol, and it'll allow us to use the authorized service manager for natural RPC batch impersonation. So if we look at passwords and why 8-character passwords are really not very secure anymore, I think in the end, we'll probably, as I've been doing a lot of reading of this, passwords will eventually go away completely. I know there's a mix and match now, but I do believe we'll live in a world without passwords at some stage. But you can basically see that these are the rules that if you want to use the 100 characters, all the pieces that need to be in your particular password. And we know we spend forever doing these. Every time I have to change my Empower password, I cringe, trying to think of what the new one is going to be, and then of course trying to remember that. So again, this is just why we would want to use long passwords. I'm sure we all know this, but this is just to re-emphasize that Natural has now introduced that ability to have the long passwords, and we do have a lot of customers that we know are using it. So with Natural ASM, when we talk about the RPC auth for impersonation, you can see with Natural 921, this is a lot more simpler. You don't have to have that authorized library. Everything can be done from NatASM for impersonation. For those of you who don't know what impersonation it means when you want the client user ID you're using in RPC, the actual end user, to be moved into the star user variable within the Natural session, and not the user ID of the batch RPC server, because that's, most people need that now for auditing, etc. It's just a quick summary. Long passwords, high security due to passwords longer than 8. RPC front end does not need to be APF authorized. You use the new RPC protocol. Using NatASM, I think one day it's going to become a complete requirement, but right now it is still voluntarily, but there's so much more benefits to using the APF. The NatASM feature for global buffer pools, etc. So as far as the RPC server trace goes, we've always known there's been a server trace, but we've never been able to do it dynamically. We've always had to have set it up beforehand. And then if we want to change the trace, we have to go back in and stop and start the RPC server. So now you can send commands through to do that. This is just telling you what the different trace levels are. Trace level, as I said before, you had to have set it up beforehand. During runtime, the trace level could not be changed, and now this is something you can do. So this is the different ways that you can do that by using a CICS send command provided by Entirx, that you can override and change that trace feature on the fly. There have also been some changes to the Natural NDV. Of course, NDV is so important now, with NaturalONE being the only way you get into Natural is via the NDV itself. So sometimes you need to trace this, and often support will ask you for a PAL trace or an NDV trace, and then you need to go and learn how to do those two traces for them. There also were some changes that have been implemented. So this is before, when we're doing a PAL trace, it is becoming easier to basically read the trace after the fact by making some improvements to the actual text that is returned from a PAL trace. If any of you don't know how to do a PAL trace and you need to do one, let us know. And support knows exactly how to send you instructions to do that as well. One of the bad features of the PAL trace was there were duplicate headers in the text and the output. So these have been removed, and you can see the output is now a lot smaller and probably more condensed, and you at least can follow it yourself before you send it off to support. So that was the removing of the duplicate headers. If you want to do, let me see the previous one, it's not in there. Okay, so if you want to do a PAL trace, remember that you put that into the eclipse.ini file for the client side, and you'll see that you'll use the variable dpl trace equals on, and you place that inside the Eclipse-INI. And when you run your NaturalONE session and you get the trace, you'll find that in whatever is %temp% on your workstation. And then there's been some changes now where the RPC server will not start if there's certain parameters that are incorrect, which I think is great. So basically, if there are problems during initialization, an NDV server will not come up, but it'll tell you probably what that is. So we stop the server immediately, and we don't have an incorrect server up. Anybody now wanting to do tracing and monitoring of an NDV? I don't know if you knew this, but the way to do that is using the HTML monitor. To get to the HTML monitor after you've installed Natural NDV is going to be your IP address and the port. There's a default port. And these are all the features that you can use within. So if you want to see what users are active in NDV, if you want to kick them out, if you want to cancel them, you want to list all of them, if you want to display the trace, etc., that can all be done from the HTML monitor. If you want to do a palm check, sometimes when you're mapping in from NaturalONE, you want to make sure that everything you're sending through to the mainframe is correct. You can actually do a palm check and test the mapping without actually trying to link up front there. So that is, I think, is a nice feature. If you want us to do a deeper dive into the HTML monitor, let us know, and we can do that for you guys. Okay, last topic of the day, and this is Natural for DB2. And this is 921, so anybody who's not needing Natural 921 can fall asleep, but wait till the end. No, just kidding you. So Natural for the Q&A session. Anyway, so Natural NDB 921 has got some changes in it, and we have some very, very large customers here in the US, and I'm sure everywhere else in the world. I'm just aware of the ones here that use Natural against DB2. It's my opinion. I don't understand why everybody in the world doesn't use Natural against DB2. So at a high level, support for DB2 ZOS version 12 syntax enhancements, and these were for the function levels 501 to 510. So this is making how Natural uses or interfaces with these new function levels that are produced by IBM and DB2. There's also support for Natural DB2 for ZOS version 13 DB2. There's a new NDB Gen I parameter for NDV, and we also have increased the maximum DB2 size from 64K to 32,767K. I think we go into a little bit more detail in these, what they are. So that if you're using the list aggregate function, this is for support with function level 501. If you're doing graphic and non-graphic scalar functions, this is an improvement that you can do the select with these two new scalar functions within your select statement in Natural DB2. There's been some synonyms introduced, so you can now say is null instead of is space null, and the same for not null. There's been changes in the current lock timeout. So when things were timing out too quickly, you can now change those registers to change your timeouts as needed. I think we are now very, very close to the end. And of course, being IBM, there's a whole lot of new AI stuff. So from the mainframe, we can now obviously do some AI stuff. So if we wanted to do Natural, there's probably going to be ways for us within the Natural DB2 environment to make use of some of the AI tools that IBM has for us. The new DBI gen parameter for DB2 v13 has also been introduced. So these are covered in a lot more detail within the release notes. So if you please go through those. And then please also get back to us with any questions or suggestions moving forward. I do believe we have now reached the end of the presentation. I hope you find it beneficial. It was a lot of stuff to cover, but that's good news because that means Natural is staying abreast with moving technologies outside of Software AG. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me directly. We do handle a lot of NaturalONE stuff at the moment with the fact that it is being used by more and more people. So I think the first thing that's going to become apparent is when you start using NaturalONE, there are some nuances that you will need to get used to. So please don't get stuck on anything for too long without asking for help. So Nicole, that's the end of the presentation, and I've left some time for questions. I'm not sure I can answer them all, but I certainly do know somebody who can if I can't.
Thank you, Patrick. That was so informative. I think there were a couple of questions that came in through the chat. Most of them were answered, but we just received a new one, which was a change request for NATMF 139 with the option to obtain dynamic execution information, looking for a vote as to whether that is useful to you. So I think actually that's a call to action for the audience.
Yeah, that was my intent. This is a request that I had submitted. It would be useful for us. We're a huge natural DB2 shop, and some of our objects, when they're running dynamically using NDB-IOMO, this change enhancement that I submitted and Software AG has approved, they're still working on it, will provide the library and object name of what we're executing. Because if something is running dynamic, DB2 won't have that information, right? He doesn't have the DBRM. So with the audience on this call, I thought this might be a good time to try to get some people to agree if this would be useful to them, to make sure Software AG understands the significance of this request.
I don't think I can vote, but I would if I could.
And I'm not sure, Patrick, that a vote is really needed. I believe that's what Kurt Hansen said. More people to vote on it would be helpful. So
hopefully that'll come out later this year.
Yeah. Right. Thanks.
You raise a great point. Please do submit your requests and suggestions and you vote on them, and I'm sure that helps influence the priorities of the change request. So the other question that came up a little bit earlier was, is there going to be a release of Natural in October? My research indicates that there will be another release for all the Natural products this October.
Yeah. I've never known there not to be one, so I'm not too sure.
Yep.
I'm sure Kurt knows that one, though.
Yeah, the roadmaps are out on the tech community, and they do indicate what we're showing. Yeah, that there will be new releases this fall.
Yeah.
There was a special request from the team to have this translated and available for the teams in Brazil, and I will pursue that with my contacts down there to make sure that we can get this information available to you.
That's pretty funny because when me and Becky went down to Brazil, probably many years ago, and we did a roadshow, and we had dynamic translation people in as we were speaking English, they were speaking Portuguese out to everybody. So that's pretty cool.
Excellent. All right, last call for questions. And if there aren't.
Yeah, that was just me saying, yeah, last call for.
In the chat, you'll find Patrick's email if you don't already have it. So feel free to reach out to Patrick with questions, or anyone else from the Adabas and Natural team. We're all glad to here to support you. And thank you again, Patrick, for giving such a great presentation today.
Sure. And please don't get stuck with NaturalONE. If you need help, we've got all the answers.
All right. Thank you for joining us today. Please do.
Thanks.
You'll receive a survey. Let us know what you'd like to hear about next.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.